So what had happened was, just to recap and where the communications work group has been, is that we were working together on Made to Stick. We read the book, we talked about the different chapters, people did work related to Made to Stick. We finished that, and John and I were thinking it'd be nice to have another book that was a really nice, again, practical way to get delve into it. And so we're looking for a possible book right now. If you all know of any communications books that you like or dissemination books that would be helpful, we're open to that. I just ordered one to review quickly to make sure it was good before I even proposed it to the group. Um, but other than books, is there anything else that you all have thought about, like that would be nice for this group to base its conversations on?
Jennifer, I can't ever remember her name,
Mm.
but I default to her wisdom often, usually weekly, so
Mm.
that lady that did a keynote for, I think it was, I don't
Oh,
think it was, yeah. Does
wait,
she,
so how many years
so
ago?
I'm pretty sure it was when we were stuck with all virtual meetings.
Stephanie Autumn?
No, the communications
Oh,
lady.
the one who wrote Everybody Writes is
That's what
Anne
I couldn't remember.
Handley.
Yes, that's what I couldn't remember if she had a book. And thank you. Yes, I loved her messaging. I
Hmm.
mean, my notes I took are just in tatters because I go back to them all the time. I would recommend her book.
Okay, cool. I already own that. So for me, and I bought it. She offered to give me one, but just so you know, I bought it. Um, and it's a nice book because I've read it. I've read the old version, but I haven't read the new version yet. She just updated it, revised it. Um, it is practical, but pretty fun. Gives you lots of good thinking. So I'd be up for it, certainly. Tracy, you don't necessarily know what's in the book, but what are your thoughts for what to base conversation on?
No, I think that sounds good. I remember her coming. I get
Mm.
her, doesn't she does like a newsletter.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
Mhm.
I signed up for that after she was there. So I
yeah.
get that. So yeah, I think that would be a great connection.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, that's easy enough. Um, so we'll work on that. And I think John and I were talking about we can buy folks books if if you're okay with us sending books your way, or if you want to buy it for yourself and it's just easier, that's fine too. But if you do want us to have books sent to you, of course, we'll need your address. So you can just email John with that. Okay, cool. Well, like I said, I already have it. That was an easy day. Do you already own it, John?
You're muted, John.
Thank you for that, telling me that. And I also said, good memory, Jennifer, a couple minutes back on
Uh,
coming up with Anne's name. I do not own the book, so I'd be excited to
okay.
read it.
Okay, cool. That sounds good. All right, so the presentation I'm sharing today, it's funny because I don't know if you recognize his name right off, John Haber, but he does various work that we use for the implementation science work. So I didn't know he had anything about strategic communications, but this came up and I was like, oh, this is nice. It's really straightforward. So he defines strategic communications as planned and intentional use of communications by an organization to fulfill its mission and goals. One of the reasons I really like this and what it says about use of information, imagery, symbols to persuade and influence audiences to do something, feel something, create something, generate goodwill, etc. So I love this because it's telling you some really important things. One, when you plan your communications, it's so in order to do something, right? It's in order to fulfill the goals of what you're doing. And it's intentional. How you're doing the communications, you're doing it this way to help you reach those goals. And it's not just sharing information. Like imagery is really important. Symbols are really important because what you want to do is persuade and influence audiences to do something. So it's not just about receiving, it's about doing something. And the technical word for that in communications is conversion. You want people to do something as a result of what they're getting, typically, not always, always. Um, so I liked those definitions. So some of what you might be doing with it's not that you have to do all this, it's that this is what you could be accomplishing. Um, Impact passage of legislation or adoption of regulation, like especially for SEAs, when you create regulations, you have to get people on board, right? Like so that they understand what they're supposed to do and actually, and the rationale behind it and actually want to do so. Um, to be effective in what you're doing or to get something across with voting. Build and grow brands, which is how Anne Handley talks about things. And by the way, you guys are on this screen for me, so if I'm looking over here, I'm looking at you, but you don't know that I am. Um, Selling products, building movements, more. So he's got four main categories: goals, audience, message, strategy. Again, I love how simple this is. What's your goal with your overall communications? And then, if you're doing a big push on something, what's your goal of that? Who are the audiences you care about doing something as a result of this? How do you reach them? What's the best platform to reach them on? What's the kind of information they need to get? What format does it need to be in so that they'll actually be interested in getting it? And do they have the ability to use it? Have you made it really easy for them to use it? So that messaging gets into more of that format. And then the strategy is part of what I was just talking about, the platform, that how often, think about like behaviorally when you think about like or even what we've talked about with fidelity. Like, you got to think about how often are folks engaging? It's multi-layered. So getting into the goals. So communication success, planned and intentional use of communications by an organization to fulfill its mission and goals. So I want to ask you all for your work, what would be for your Annette, in your case, your SIP work, Tracy, your SPDIG, and potentially your SIP. Um, what what would communication success look like for you? What would happen? Or one example of it.
For me, one example would be even in just like our recruitment, that if people know what's going on with the projects and then they're interested and invested and want to participate in it.
Hmm. Excellent. So recruitment and having some background knowledge so that when they're
Mm.
recruited, they can actually just kind of onboard on. Is that a good way of saying it?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
that's one.
great. Yeah, absolutely. Annette, how about you?
Um, Communication success would be not necessarily that what I disseminated that they were like, oh my gosh, this is fabulous, but that they felt valued and seen and understood with the messaging sent out.
So that
Um,
they know they're the audience,
they
like because
know they're the
the
audience.
message is so appropriate to them.
Yes. And they're like, okay, well, doesn't really apply to me, or oh my gosh, I don't need to know either way. I just want them to know that, they are important.
Hmm. Hmm. Good, good. And John, how about you for your research work with your communications? How would you know you were successful?
Well, so currently, right now, our communication revolves around trying to recruit people for focus groups.
Mm,
And so direct responses to that of acceptance to attending the focus groups, those sorts of things are how we would know for what's current.
Yeah.
Then, of course, the focus groups themselves are its own communication thing, which is totally
Yeah.
different. And so monitoring responses throughout that and making
Yeah.
sure that we're getting detailed qualitative data during those.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks for sharing. All right. So it's not this. So defining success. So not clear. These are examples of not clear. This is clearly defined. Yeah, this is interesting to me. Generate news coverage. So generate more news coverage. They're saying not very clear, but generate news coverage that contains our messages. Get more public support. What would that look like? Well, that would look like passage to knowledge, maybe.
Jennifer, that makes me think about, and I
Mm,
know you were, Rob Horner was your advisor, and so
hmm
it's probably similar for you is, with FBAs, you want to operationalize. So it's not just like, uh,
Right.
the kid freaked out.
Yeah.
We really need to provide definition so that there's a picture that goes along with it. So when I think
Yeah.
about defining these goals, it's operationalizing it so you can really track it.
Yep. So if you were, had to go on leave for some reason, someone else came in and picked up your communications plan, they would know what they're looking for, right? Because get more public support would be like, well, what do we want? Well, we actually want to pass legislation in Congress. That would mean the public is supported, I guess. Yeah, I don't know that that is one to the next. So what we're going to do right now is just have a little quiet time. You guys can turn up your cameras, and for the next 5 minutes, create at least one goal and one objective related to your communications. You can jot it down wherever it makes sense on your computer or whatever, and then we'll share those when we come back in like 5 minutes. It's like 2:26. Is that okay? 5 minutes? Okay, cool. I'll see you in a second.
All right, we're back. How'd it go? It's okay. Okay, who wants to share first? Oh, Tracy.
So I have a goal of increased interest in the math for Maine and PBIS projects in the northernmost part of the state.
Mm.
And then objective through communications engagement. And then I put like small meetings, newsroom pieces, social media, increase the number of applicants from the northernmost parts of the state by 10% for the 2025-2026 project cohorts.
Ooh, I love it. Nice. It's very specific. And you could share that with anyone and they'd understand. Great. Well, and it'll feel good once you accomplish it. Excellent. Annette, how about you?
Okay. So Jennifer, I segued a little bit just based on the Heath brothers uh wisdom on SMART goals and education. And so I use the Heath brothers hard goal setting method, which is heartfelt, animated, required, and difficult. So
Mm.
uh needs some wordsmithing, but so oh, and I also went back to our NOG homework on indigenous peoples,
Mm.
that thing we're reading. I can't think of the right title for it right now.
Okay.
So the Montana SIP communications will respect the individual tribal relationalities of Montana tribes. So that also does link back directly to what Montana has on record for tribal consultation processes within Montana. So I would be able to show triangulation in one other area. With a goal of an initial goal of indigenous methodologies will remain at the forefront of all tribal interactions. So heartfelt, showing my audience that this is really important. Animated, we're not going to, give up on that effort. It's required. Like I said, I can tie it back to several other documents recorded
Mhm.
at the Department of Education. And difficult. It is a task that's difficult to continually keep that your focal point.
Yeah, it is. So it's about, to me, what I heard you saying, it's about being culturally humble in the messaging. Is that a good way of
Yeah,
saying
and it's not just a matter of, culturally humble in the messaging, but also keeping in mind that each tribal relationality does not mirror the next tribal
it? Hmm.
relationality. That just because they're indigenous peoples doesn't mean that everything is done exactly the same.
Hmm.
And so that, probably requires, okay, who am I primarily trying to reach out to right now? I might have, subcategories that I'm trying to reach, but who's my primary audience and target that message to the way their tribal interactions run
Yep.
um, in a group. So it's, um, for Montana tribes in particular, being treated like they're mirror images of each other is a huge disappointment.
Got it. Can imagine.
Yeah, so I need some tweaking, but not bad for
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah. Good. And John, did you create yours too?
I did. I think mine was a little more targeted because I've been thinking about it a lot, and that's recruiting the focus groups. And
Yeah.
so mine is recruit at least 24 qualified participants for focus group discussions across 3 stakeholder groups. That's families, community leaders, and educators.
Yeah.
By April 1st through
Okay.
targeted emails and school outreach. and success will be 80% of attendance at the session. Ultimately, I'm looking at needing 21 people, 7 people at each of the different stakeholders. So 80% of attendance at the sessions.
Awesome. Good. Well, all three were so different, you know, very, very different goals. And one thing that's interesting, I feel like as a challenge, like John, for you, for what you're trying to accomplish, it seems like it would be nice to have the audiences that you're trying to, or the roles you're trying to have represented in those focus groups, to have somebody from each of those roles give you some feedback on the communications so that you could make it, tweak it for the audience in the way, one person is one person, but
That's a really good point, Jennifer, and it kind of ties into what Annette was just talking about. My project, as you know, maybe Annette and you and Tracy don't know, is it's a family school partnership curriculum that we're developing for Pacific Islander residents who live in the Pacific Northwest. And so similar to what you were talking about, Annette, we're looking at people, communities from different Pacific Island nations or different Pacific islands. And my experience is similar. They don't like to be looked at as homogenous, right? There's definitely cultural distinctions between. And so what we've been doing, Jennifer, is we've got an advisory group for our research project that is comprised of people from groups that are reflected in the communities we're working with. So the different school districts that we're working with, we've got people that we've pulled on to be part of this advisory board, and they're helping with our communication as well.
Good. Excellent. That's good. That's it. And Annette, for you, it's pretty hard. Like you're thinking about and how many tribes in all are you thinking about communicating with? Or represented in the places you're communicating with?
Yeah, so right now, the Montana SUP, just because, people don't necessarily always live in their home tribal nation.
Right.
So basically, across the schools the Montana SUP serves, I am reaching out to all 12 of our Montana recognized tribes.
Okay. Okay. Well, 12 is more doable than what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think it's an underwritten norm that within the state we respect that even some of those persons have tribal heritage outside of Montana's traditional tribes, but that realistically speaking, as an educator in Montana, I am, and we are actually constitutionally bound in Montana. It's called our Indian Education for All constitutional mandate. So all educators across Montana are expected to have a baseline and continue to grow your knowledge about Montana's tribes.
Yeah, good. Good.
So,
All
and
right.
that includes if I'm Blackfeet, I don't get to just say I'm Blackfeet, so I know everything. I also must learn about the other 11 tribes.
Seems like a good policy.
Yeah, it's been in place since I think 76 or 77.
Wow. That was
Yeah.
early days for
Yeah.
having any respect for tribal nations, right?
Yeah. Pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the mid to late 70s.
That's great. All right. So that was what is success? Audiences. This is one of my favorites. So I have to say, I was speaking with a group of researchers the other day, and we were talking about dissemination, scaling, and sustainability. And with the dissemination piece, I was talking about knowing your audience. Like, oh, I never thought about that. I'm like, oh, okay. So, they were at the end of their project. I just felt like I thought everyone knew. So, when it comes to those goals and objectives, if we just talk about who the audience is and how they, the kind of message that would sit best with them and the platform that would be best to reach them on. So yeah, let's just talk about that. I think that's the easiest. So name your audience, even if you've already said it, just specify again who you're trying to reach to for that goal and objective. And then I know this is kind of getting into the next part, but like, where do they live for their communications? What's their native land? I guess that's not the most appropriate thing to say considering our conversation, but like what, like, some people are like, well, families are on Facebook, that's generally true, but like, what do you know about where like people like to get their information? What seems to be working, and anything specific about the messaging so far for this audience that works? And why don't we'll start from the last this time. So John, who is your audience, and where do they like to get their information, and what kind of messaging do you think they like?
You called on me, right, Jennifer?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. So the audience that we're looking for, like I said, it's educators or school personnel, families, and community leaders. And the families were, well, let me start back with the schools, right? So schools, that audience is typically contacted through emails, right, is our experience. And so we're doing that, as well as myself and our project coordinator. We're getting ready to kind of do a town hall road trip, if you will, where we'll be visiting the various school districts that we're working with, connecting with the school districts there, and then once we're there, going and connecting with the school leadership as well. So that's our plan, in person and emails through them. The community leaders, we're getting information about them through our advisory board, who I mentioned a bit ago. And our intent is to do these this town hall kind of road trip to visit them in person. We really want to make the inroads with them face to face, rather than just reaching out by email. Of course, we'll start by email and phone calls to put those meetings in place, but face to face with them. And then as far as communicating with the family, we're going to be using, our plan at any rate is to get input from the schools and the community leaders as to what are their best avenues of communications to families in both realms, and find out.
Yeah. The other thing, these poor researchers, I'm using them as the non-example, but you know, one of the things I was talking about from Made to Stick was about, presentations. And remember when they talked about like parachute into your presentation, instead of being like, here's what we're going to cover today, and here's my agenda. They're talking about like, make it something unexpected, make it, or something emotional, something like that people are really going to notice. And that, you want to express 20 ideas, you think all 20 are critical and people can't live without them. People are going to be able to actually take in 2 ideas. So what 2 ideas do you really care about? And then can you use pictures, symbols? Can you use metaphor? Can you use story? Can you use this and that? And so that is true for written work and in-person verbalization. But I think we so often kind of revert to our standard ways of practice, right? Like the kind of the boring PowerPoint or the boring form email that everyone's always used. Maybe it's necessary in some places for federal government, or sorry, not federal government, for state government, or because your human resource, or not human subjects board told you got to use this kind of communication. So there are times when you don't get to play with it, but if you do get to play with it, those made to stick rules, the success principles of simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional, and story success. Those are really critical in the written and the verbalization.
Jennifer,
All
I'm
right.
glad you brought
Yeah.
that up.
Yeah.
We just hired our project coordinator is a young man who is from the island of Chukis, which
Never heard of it.
that's one of the states of the Federated States of Micronesia. And
Ah.
he's only recently moved here, so super excited to have him as part of our project. And he'll certainly help us parachute into some of these groups. But the reason I'm happy you brought it up is I'm going to pass on my made to stick copy to him.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Annette, who's your audience? I know you said it already, but just state it
Yeah,
again.
well, first I have to say, I think I want to trade projects and somehow join John's project because I would like to have town hall meetings on various Pacific islands.
That's in the Pacific Northwest. We're not going to the islands
Oh,
themselves,
I thought you were
unfortunately.
headed.
But he
Okay.
does sometimes, and he's made life choices that have worked out
I
for
don't
him.
know. Tracy was feeling a little like abandoning her project as well. So my audience is our educators that primarily serve our indigenous youth across Montana. And if the schools are on or adjacent to the reservations, a lot of those staff do they are indigenous persons themselves. Um, we had very strict protocols. I haven't actually seen anything. We had an election. The previous person termed out, and this new person, such a breath of fresh air, hasn't said communication protocols are released. But that's probably a good point to bring up to um, more important people than me. Hey, can we branch out on how we communicate? But realistically, Montana has a significant increase in 4-day schools. So really, even if we can branch out in our communications, realistically, still the best method for people within our schools is their school email. Um, most of these educators are now showing up between 6 and 6:30 in the morning, and then the students leave at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they've got their union contract until probably 4:30. Um, and it's always carved in stone, no matter who is the state superintendent, that you do your best not to disturb educators when they are engaged in teaching and learning. So things like text messaging and their personal cell phones going off and that, because they
Mm,
would all be personal cell phones, no school district issues, cell
hmm
phones.
hmm
So it doesn't mean that that's a failed method. I do know my messages are read via school
Good.
email. Um, because that's also how they communicate with the parents of the children they serve.
Hmm
So they do random spot checks on their email during the school days.
Yeah. Good. I mean, not good, but good that you know all that you understand the
Yeah.
context.
Yeah. Messaging, just interacting has become incredibly difficult because of those 4-day school weeks. Um, they're exhausted and they're not
Mm,
giving 10 seconds of their time the minute they are allowed to leave, which I
Yeah.
don't blame them.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
So
interesting.
they have a 3-day weekend, the teachers as well as the kids.
Yes, and initially when it was presented, I had this maybe clearly it was a false perception.
Mm,
Um, I thought at least Friday mornings would be for team meetings and time for professional development.
hmm
So then I kind of had this picture that those of us at the state level would all be fighting for that precious Friday morning time.
hmm
And that's not how it works. They are 3-day weekend. They're not in the buildings.
hmm Got it. That is really hard.
It is hard. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing with us. And Tracy, name your audience and then how do they best receive communications?
So in Maine, the area we're trying to get to is Aroostook County. And in Maine, they lovingly refer to it as the county. And
Mm,
so it's very much my understanding, and I'm from away. In Maine, if you weren't born and raised here, you're from away. So I'm from away
oh,
as
got it.
well. Is it's very tight-knit communities. So our Math for Maine team went, our trainer and our coach went to the county, and one of the members of my team outside of that group is from that area. And we
Mm,
joke that it's 6 degrees of her name, and that anyone like knows her or her husband in the county. So she went with them, and they did math and mocktails. And
fun.
so just brought people in to do some math games so that they could share. So it's almost kind of parachuting in. It wasn't here, let us stand here and talk to you about our project. It was come do some math games with us, have some mocktails, and kind of build, this a little
Yeah,
bit of community with somebody who's from here and not from away. And so we'll see how that plays out when our applications come out to see if anybody, and we're also talking with them about how we can maybe, if there's 3 schools in that area that are interested, we'd come up and do the training there, because that's another issue for them is the training and the coaching, or the training during the year is online, but over the summer it's in Augusta, which is 4 or 5
mm,
hours from them. And
yeah,
then and like with coaching and things like that, it wouldn't make sense for our team to go all the way up there just for one school, just because it is
mm,
4 or 5 hours away.
yeah,
So we kind of joke that it's like the field of dreams. If we build it, will they come, or do we need to,
mm,
wait till they want to get here and then, we can build it. So we're kind of
yeah.
playing around with that right now, but that's kind of where we are.
Okay, okay. So communications wise, email,
Yeah, so
you,
email there's a small University of Maine at Presque Isle University up there.
okay.
And their math teacher educator there is
Mhm,
on our math advisory panel. So we were in communication with her. So we hosted it at the university. She knew people. We sent emails out to the schools in the area, and communicated with them in that way.
mhm,
So it wasn't a huge turnout, but there was a turnout.
yeah,
So we were excited about that. So
good,
it's kind of our first steps in, all right, how do we keep building this up? And it may be
yeah,
that no one applies this year, but they see that we made the effort to come up there. And then if we keep doing it, it becomes oh, wait, they're really interested in participating and working with us up here.
yeah,
And so we'll just continue to do that.
good. But I do like what you said about using the native person and her local person and her relationships to
Mhm.
build on. That was really smart. Whether or not you planned that, it was smart.
Yeah.
Worked out right. Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone for sharing about your audience and communication with them. All right. So ultimate audiences are the key to achieving your goals and objectives. Influencer audiences influence the ultimate audiences. So I was trying to think of your team member who's from the county would be an influencer. She's part of you, so she's not really an influencer audience. Can you all think of any influencer audiences related to the ultimate audience for achieving your goals and objectives?
Well, I think for me, or our project, it's the schools and the community leaders are in a way the influencer audience for the families, right?
Yes,
They play a
yes,
dual role because
yes.
we're trying to recruit them as
Yeah,
well, but they're the ones that actually have the direct contact with the families that we're trying to work with as well. And
yeah.
so, like I said, they're influencers in the sense that they're going to help us figure out how to target our messaging.
Good. Like it. Annette and Tracy, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would actually say for the state agency, our Youth Rise group
Yes.
is our influencer audience. Um, they are very knowledgeable, very energetic young people in these middle schools and high schools. And they're not saying, teachers, you're horrible people. Their message, no matter what year we're engaging with the Rise group, is static. We just want positive relationships with you. We want to know that you actually care about me. And our ultimate audience is listening.
That's
Because
great.
now we've got, I lose track. It was pre-COVID. No, yeah, somewhere around COVID. So yeah, I guess
Mhm.
somebody pointed out that was 5 years ago. So, because it was during the COVID debacle where they were, whoever was talking at the federal level couldn't remember the term for indigenous and called indigenous persons across the US something else. And that's where the kids came up with RISE.
Yeah,
So 5 years down the road, our data is showing educators are paying attention to what these young people are saying.
that's great. I love that. Tracy, anything you wanted to add for the
I think
influencer and ultimate?
for us, like for our advisory panels for both of the major projects we have, we bring in schools who've to share their experiences, and I think they
Mhm.
become influencers in that way. And that's something I haven't thought about for our outreach to the county. Is to have some of those people share their stories of the changes that they've seen, and the progress that they're making. So definitely
Absolutely.
to tap into that.
Absolutely. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this because we have a dissemination community of practice for OSEP's technical assistance centers. And Eliana Tardillo is one of the facilitators, and she works for National Center on Education Outcomes, National Center on Systemic Improvement, another TA center. And she has her degree in communications and getting her PhD in communications. And one of the things she pushes are short videos for communicating because you can do it. You really don't need any equipment at this point in time, right? Sure, you can do short videos, however, and there's like editing tools in Apple or you use various and sundry, but short and even what is it, Flipgrid, right? People can record videos on that. And so if you have your teachers who've had impact, just having these short videos sharing what that impact is, that could be a really nice, easy way to share it. And quotes. Quotes are always nice too. I like quotes. Okay, great. Good idea. Now we're nearing the end of our time, which is sad because I love this topic. So we got the influence, ultimate audience, our organization. I think you guys get that. Sorry, I'm missing. It says the key to achieving communications goals. All right, so messaging. So strategic message is a set of statements that prompts targeted audience to take desired action. So again, you always want to like what as a result of the thing I'm sending or the thing I am saying or the video we are showing, what is the desired action you want and how will you know if they take it? In a way that the audience can hear it, right? So if they don't engage in it, really doesn't matter if a tree falls in the forest kind of thing. Words, tones, images, personal appearance, colors, symbolism, and silence all communicate. So the first core principles is strategic messages. Again, I kind of already said this, I've gone over it. So thinking about people's needs and what they want, and with communication, I had a little like, the other day. There's a state, a SPDIG state, and I don't know that it's the SPDIG who did this. I think it's at the SEA, but it may not be the SPIG itself. But there's this document. They're doing a lot of literacy work, and there's a new literacy law, and they're communicating about the good work that they've accomplished. and it was 4 pages of text, and it was all the research literacy terms, phonemic awareness and this and that, which is fine. Those are important terms, but to have a whole document of terms like that. And at the very final page, the last 2 bullets was some of the outcomes of the work. So they're just explaining all the work, the activities, why it's important with all language. There was no like headline, right? Like, why do we care? Starting with the headline, don't bury the lead. B, there were no images, there was no exciting language, there was no like, again, just why do people care? And the question I asked them, not the people who created, but the audience I was speaking to, is what do you actually read? Unless it's like the most interesting thing to you. Like when it comes to Indigenous populations, probably no matter, even if it's 4 pages of boring text, Annette's probably going to read it, right? When it comes to math interventions for children with disabilities, probably Tracy's going to read that no matter what. But if it was not that topic and another topic, like when do you actually engage in something? Like Anne Handley's newsletter, she puts it together. It's short, it's fun, it's got a picture, it's got a story, it's got a thing. You know what you're getting, and you know it's something you actually want to read, right? Like it's not a need to read Anna Handley's newsletter, but you want to read it. And so you read it. And so really, I think that's like that first level. Would you want to read or engage in or watch what you're putting out? And then of course you have your stakeholders let you know. So motivating the target audience. This is great. We talked about using those stakeholders, right? And then what are their desires? What do they need to get out of this? Or sorry, not need. What do they want to get out of something? And how are you going to be ensuring that's in your communications? This is interesting, actually. I just passed up, but so give them a break, slow down, compared to please slow down. My mom, my dad works here. What's more, and of course, this is the emotional part, right, of success. So that I just named the state. That state's document I was talking about, it was all about process, right? It was their activities, etc. It Again, the impact was at the very end, and it wasn't even very interesting impact. They could have had, a graph. They could have had a big statement, something, in color to make it more interesting. They could have started with that. To Annette's earlier point, focusing on the heart, not the brain. We learned some of this right in the data conversations that we've had before about how you share data. Easily understood. It goes back to that simple. There was so much jargon in that document. It was all researcher language, right? And even researchers aren't that excited to read research articles for the most part, unless it's their little area in the world. And then convey a strong mental picture, right? What mental picture are you painting with your message? Can you picture in your mind? Think about Katie Novak and how she talks, the language she uses to paint that picture for you. So I'll stop there because we're at the hour. This was fun for me. You guys, I'm going to put so you can finish out the presentation if you're interested. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. Anything else for the good of the order? So John will, if you send your address, John will send you the book. Otherwise, go ahead and purchase it yourself. Just know that there's a revised, more recent version, and you'll want to get that one.
Great. Thank you so much. This is wonderful.
Good. I enjoyed it too. Thank you.
Have a wonderful weekend and happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
guys. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Congratulations, Annette. Bye.
Thank you, Tracy.